Welcome, English 2 students, to day 3 of reading Act 2 of The Crucible by Arthur Miller. I need to find my book version of it. That way I can have that as dramatic, like, pow, and for y'all. But I digress. Y'all aren't here to hear me talk about how I should, show books to you and whatnot. Y'all are here to find out what we talked about in class face-to-face about the last part of Act 2. Yes, we finished Act 2 today. So let's walk ourselves through some of the things that we focused on and talked about. So where we left off yesterday was on page 1279. Page 1279. I got to open mine back up to page 1279. It's actually at the very bottom of page 1279 where Giles Corey appears in the doorway and he yells, "John!" And then we immediately flip over to 1280. So 1280 would work. 1280 will work. So that's page 14 of the PDF if you're keeping track at home. So right here we have Giles Corey and Frances Nurse show up, and both of their wives have been arrested for witchcraft, and some pretty crazy reasons why. And both of them are kind of going after Reverend Hell because he's the witch hunter, So hey, this is kind of your fault. So Frances, his wife has been charged for murder. She charged for the marvelous and supernatural murder of Goody Putman's babies. What am I told to do, Mr. Hale? So his wife, the nurse clan's matriarch, has been arrested for murdering Goody Putman's babies. Now, if you remember back in Act 1, the nurses and the Putmans didn't really get along that well. And then Giles Corey's wife, Martha Corey, was arrested for this. And this is like crazy and actually kind of funny. That bloody mongrel Walcott charged her. You see, he bought a pig of my wife 4 or 5 years ago, and the pig died soon after. So he come dancing for his money back. So my Martha says to him, "Walcott, if you haven't had the wit to feed a pig properly, you will not live to own many," she says. Now he goes to court and claims that from that day that he cannot keep a pig alive for more than 4 weeks because Martha bewitched her with their books, which is actually because he just doesn't feed the pig. But that's the reason why he claims that she's a witch. So what's the common denominator you see within both of these reasons? Like one, the families don't get along. The other one, he was mad that they didn't refund him on a pig and he can't keep a pig alive because he doesn't feed it properly. These are kind of petty reasons, aren't they? And so these petty reasons are forcing people to be arrested for witchcraft, which, as we already pointed out, could result in you dying. So, yeah, the petty disputes turn into very weighty matters. Then Ezekiel Cheever, who is kind of like the sheriff, shows up. Here's where we're going to talk about this idea of Chekhov's gun. So Chekhov was a Russian writer, and Chekhov made this claim about like a gun. If a gun shows up in Act 1, it needs to be fired by the end of the play. And so we don't necessarily have Chekhov's gun here, but what we have is Chekhov's puppet, or Chekhov's doll. So if you remember earlier in the act, Mary Warren gives Elizabeth Proctor a doll. And it's very strange and kind of like out there, but they kind of accept it. And Ezekiel Cheever's there because he's looking for a doll, because allegedly Elizabeth Proctor has a doll. And they kind of go back and forth like, this is nonsense. We don't have any doll. And he sees the doll on the stand. He's like, what's that doll doing there? What's the deal with that puppet? Well, of course, the deal with that puppet is it was Mary Warren's. But of course, Ezekiel Cheever does not believe this. And so he starts examining it and looking at it, and he discovers a needle in it. And get this crazy, this is just cray stuff. This is what, keep in mind, witchcraft is not real. Witchcraft is not real. And even in the story, witchcraft is not real. But here's what Abigail Williams did. The Williams girl, Abigail Williams, sir, sat to dinner with Reverend Parris's house tonight, and without a word nor warning, she falls to the floor like a struck beast, and he says, and screamed that a bull that would weep to hear. And he goes to save her, and stuck 2 inches in the flesh of her belly, he draws a needle out, and demanding of her how she come to be stabbed, she testify it were your wife's familiar spirit, push it in her. So Abigail Williams takes a 2-inch needle and stabs herself with it in the abdomen in order to try to get Goody Proctor to be arrested for witchcraft. And it works. It happens. In fact, that's what happens on the next page. In fact, I highlighted this in my notes here, this little exchange here. Elizabeth, her breath knocked out. Why? This girl is a murderer. She must be ripped out of this world. Cheever, you heard it, sir. Ripped out of the world, Herrick. You heard it. So basically, yeah, she's trying to kill her. And then John Proctor gets very angry and starts to drop like some fire lines down here. This is a really good like combination of lines here. Is the accuser always holy now? The little crazy children are jangling the keys to the kingdom. Common vengeance writes the law. Like that's some good stuff that John Proctor's talking about right there as they try to arrest his wife. And his wife is like, fine, just take me. There's nothing we can do, John. Just take me. And this line that she points towards Mary Warren is really good too. Help Mr. Proctor as if you were his daughter. You owe me that and much more. Because the reason why she's in jail is because, you know, that. Another thing I want to look at, we have another fire line here from John Proctor. I will fall like an ocean onto that court. It's a good one. I have this highlighted because I just want you to think about for this. She looks about the room as though to fix it in her mind. Why is that? What is she doing there in that stage note? Why is that stage note there? She looks about the room as though to fix it in her mind. So what is she doing with that particular stage note? All right, we'll move on to the next one. Here we see Hell's exit, and Hell kind of does two things. First off, he's doing two things. First off, he's trying to kind of stay neutral. What line right here kind of helps us see that he's trying to stay neutral? But then he also kind of adds a jab right here with this line. It profit nothing you shall lay the curse of your vengeance of a little girl. And then he kind of goes on here. This is a very important like line to kind of focus on, or a paragraph to focus on before Hell leaves. He's kind of telling all three men to kind of look at themselves and do a good hard look in the mirror before they keep going on. Then everybody leaves, and it's just Mary Warren and John Proctor left. Keep in mind, earlier in the play, John Proctor threatened to whip and grabbed an actual whip Mary Warren to within an inch of her life. And so Mary Warren, and now she just got his wife arrested for witchcraft. She is fearful of her life, and she is freaking out, and it looks like it's something bad's going to happen until she says this line. Abigail charge lechery on you, Mr. Proctor. And if you look at the footnote, you can kind of see what lechery means. And John Proctor says this, and this is an important turn in the play. This is an important development in John Proctor's character. Proctor hesitating and with a deep hatred for himself. Good, then her saintliness is done with. We'll slide together into our pit. You can tell the court what you know. Basically, I'm not going to paint the picture for you right there. Put it together. What's the one thing Proctor wants more than anything? At the very beginning of this act, and at the very beginning of Act 2, everything he's trying to do, what's the one thing he wants but he cannot get? This is what he's going to have to do in order to get that. All right, and when we end with a very dramatic scene, and this is and here I'll go ahead and read the very dramatic ending. Proctor grasped her by the throat as though he would strangle her. Make your peace with it. Now hell and heaven grapple on our backs, and all of our pretense is ripped away. Make your peace. He throws her to the floor where she sobs, I cannot. And now, half to himself, staring and turning to the open door. Peace. It is a providence and not great change. We are only what we always were, but naked now. He walks as though towards a great whore facing the open sky. Ah, naked. In the wind, God's icy wind will blow. She is over, sobbing, I cannot. And that's how it ends. Because keep in mind, like, what did Abigail say to all the girls? If she, in Act 1, if she even tried to snitch, she'd come into the black of some pointy night and bludgeon them to death, much like the indigenous people or the Indians did to her poor parents. All right, that is Act 2. You need to make sure you have 20 annotations over Act 2. tomorrow, Act 2 prompt over the 400 word prompt over motivation. What motivates Barry Warren, what motivates John Proctor, what motivates Elizabeth Proctor, and what motivates Reverend Hell. So you're going to establish what motivates all those characters, and you're also going to tell us how those motivations conflict with one another. That's due tomorrow. Annotations are due tonight, and I will see y'all later. Bye-bye.